Hi, this is Cory Wheeler coming to you from Zylo. Really excited to have a panel together for us around Octane 20 this year. We've got some great customers that work with Zylo each and every day. And to give a little context to the conversation today, you know, we practice and promote SaaS management as an organization with our customers. We have a framework and a methodology that we've developed over the last 4 years with a phenomenal set of customers that we're actively promoting today. But what I really want to share with you guys today are 3 very real examples of how different leaders in progressive technology organizations are approaching the problem, the challenge, or the opportunity, whichever way you think of it, of the explosive growth of SaaS across their business. If you follow this space, and you definitely should, you'd know that there's been a 45-fold increase in the number of SaaS applications available to companies over the last decade. And we're really moving from the era of sales-led software in the enterprise, away from even marketing-led software, to the era of product-led enterprise software. And many times that enters an organization through a lot of different ways, a lot known and a lot unknown as well. But the user and the business unit now really own their software experiences. So kind of in a symbolic sense, they've elbowed the IT teams and the sourcing teams, sometimes even the identity access management teams, and their best class processes out of the equation to create their own software ecosystems. It's a personalized software world. So what we do at Zylo is help businesses make sense of that and make the most of these ecosystems and embrace frameworks for managing SaaS across their business. So if you'd like to learn more, I would definitely encourage you to visit Zylo.com, where there is a wealth of information around the industry and what we're building today. But what I really want to focus on today is how the leaders that we've got on this call today are approaching the problem and solving their organization's unique SaaS challenges in a way that makes sense for their companies and their users inside their companies. So very quickly, just by way of introduction myself first, Cory Wheeler, one of the co-founders of Zylo. I head up all customer success and services at Zylo as well, responsible for all things customer related. I spent many years in finance and procurement related roles, where I first came in contact with the challenges that SaaS creates inside progressive organizations. So with that, I would like to introduce each of my guests. Today we've got with us Gordon Atkin from Instructure, Shane Jarrett from Pluralsight, and Curtis Salinas from SLAC. And I'm going to turn it over to each of them to provide a quick introduction of themselves. And gentlemen, first off, thank you so much for joining the call today. I'd love for each of you to go through a quick introduction of yourself and stay away from SaaS Management and Zylo for the time being, and just let the audience know who you are, what your role is inside your organization, and what you're doing actively today. And then we can dive into SaaS management after that. So Gordon, I will start with you. Please provide a quick introduction.
You bet. So I'm Gordon Atkin, Vice President of Global Information Systems and Technology at Instructure. And that basically puts me in the position to oversee all of our software spend, anything that we do from an IT services perspective. We've been a Zylo customer for, I think, about 3 years now. We were early adopters and trying to solve the problem of how much inventory do we have from a software perspective and what is our total spend. And luckily we came across Zylo. It was a great fit for us at the time. I think in terms of what we're focused on right now, we are heavily focused on reducing our software spend and the number of applications. And Zylo has been a great partner for us to be able to do that. It gives us the insight. It gives us quite a bit of information to be able to do that effectively and to have the people and processes to support it. So happy to be part of the panel and looking forward to the conversation.
That's great. Thank you, Gordon. Curtis, how about you?
Hi there. My name's Curtis Salinas. I lead strategic planning and operations across business technology at SLAC. The operations side of my world really is everything from support to media productions to collaboration apps. And then on the strategic planning side, all of the PMs across the org report into me, as well as I'm responsible for things like financial planning and our annual planning cycle. So really top of mind for us, it's a bit different for us. While cost is always top of mind, we're also in very much a growth mode. And so my struggle is ensuring that we're putting the best solutions and the most simple experiences in front of our users. And Zylo has been helpful for that, which we'll get into, I'm sure. And really, just trying to get our arms around all the different use cases and SaaS tools that are out there.
That's great. Thanks, Curtis. And Shane, would love for you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Shane Jarrett, head of business technology at Pluralsight, and I joined Pluralsight about 2.5 years ago. And at the time, there was no central IT function. So a lot of these SaaS applications and a lot of what was being run was being owned and managed by the various siloed business groups out there. So sales had their stuff that they were buying, marketing had their things. So when I came in, a big thing was just to centralize all this, and just as Curtis mentioned, as you're trying to grow, are we buying the right systems, and what's the our enterprise architecture plan for the future? So it's definitely on top of mind to control everything that we have, manage the licenses very effectively, but also look at building what we need for the future so that we can continue to scale, continue to grow, and that we can build that digital business platform to help the business grow however it needs to, whether it's we acquire a company or we just are growing naturally.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, Shane. And before I get into sort of the nuts and bolts of SaaS management and understanding how you guys have previously managed software internally and how you're managing it now, I'd love to pull on that string, Shane, around kind of what led you to Zylo. And I think you alluded to it, but maybe give us a quick overview of what were the specific problems you were looking to solve, and how did you make a business case to move forward with a SaaS management platform when you were looking to kind of understand everything across your organization?
Yeah, I just started as the head of IT and business apps, and as I started, there were some things that were coming to me saying, okay, Shane, now you own Salesforce. Okay, now you own, and we are just implementing Okta. Now you own these different things, but there were a lot of things that we didn't know about. And so we also were starting a procurement function at the very same time. So getting together with procurement, we were trying to get a handle on what exactly is out there. And we really didn't know. It was kind of like the surprise of the week when you would have something else coming in. Someone would say, oh, we need to renew this, etc. So it was probably about 4 or 5 months in when I started talking to Zylo. Zylo was brought to me by one of our board members, had talked to me about it, said, you might want to look at this. So it really was, SaaS discovery was on my mind at the very beginning. I need to know what is out there. And I looked at other solutions as well, and I just thought the best way I could see was to go to the financials, go to what are we paying for? And a lot of that was going on I shouldn't say personal, but on business credit cards that we couldn't see at the time. It was very difficult. So we were trying to run reports, and procurement was running reports in our different systems to say, okay, we think we have this and that. So bringing it into Zylo gave us one place to do that SaaS discovery. And once we know what we have, then we can start to plan on what we need to do with all of those systems.
Yeah, that's perfect, and we'll get into discovery a little bit. I love how that came together at Pluralsight. Curtis, we'll turn it over to you. Getting your start with Zylo, what were some of the problems that you were looking to solve initially? What was the business case that your organization put forth to move forward with Zylo?
Yeah, I kind of look at this in two different phases for us. So our initial work with Zylo was very much procurement driven. We were trying to get a sense of how do we shift, very much like Shane, how do we shift all these expenses off of credit cards onto invoice? How do we sign multi-year deals with these core systems? And how do we really get our arms around kind of the security and technological barriers we have? And that was really the impetus for putting the tool in place in the first place. And then about 6 or 7 months later, we were putting together our FY20 financial plan, and the CFO, Alan Shim, called myself, my boss, and the head of procurement into his office and basically told us, here's all in IT, but is this the right number? Can any of you look me in the eye and tell me this is the right number? Of course, none of us could. And so it really became over the next year, and really, over the past year, I guess, now looking back, it really became about how do we take these core systems that just everyone should have, sign great deals for them, and then build ecosystems of apps around that and get to the actual number that we really need to be paying for our software here at SLAC. So those are kind of the two phases that it came about for us. So one was really just about getting line of sight into what was going on. And the second was, okay, so let's actually get this under control.
Yeah, I like that. Gordon, how about you? What was your business case when you first started looking at Zylo? And maybe even speak a little bit on how Okta is intertwined in that decision, and how that value is added in with your Zylo deployment today.
Yeah, so the number one problem that we were trying to solve at the time, and I tell people this story all the time, I received an email message from some company called Zylo, and it was this marketing message that said, hey, do you know how many applications do you guys have? And I never pay attention to any marketing emails ever, but it just happened to hit me at the right time where our board and our executive team wanted to do a thorough analysis and inventory of all of our systems. And so similar to Curtis, the question was, we came up with the answer, I think, of about 150 applications that we felt were supporting the company. And, we were evaluating. The real business case was, where do we have duplication? We have multiple conferencing, web conferencing apps. We have multiple project management applications. We have multiple this of that. And we couldn't say with certainty where all of our money was being spent. And so we obviously did the proof of concept with Zylo, found out that we had 300 plus applications, and it just kind of blew our mind that we had so much spend going on in the world. And so to couple that with not just where are we spending our money, but how is usage associated with where we're spending money, that's where the value of Okta really came in to help us. Was we were already knee deep with Okta. We were, well on a path of using it as a single sign-on platform, trying to implement different parts of provisioning, but we really never leveraged the usage side of it. And so when Zylo came and introduced, hey, here's all the usage associated with these applications, it was certainly eye-opening. And not only eye-opening, it helped us improve some of our licensing negotiations in the future, and specifically it helped us with DocuSign. So Cory, I don't know if you remember, but we were in the middle of evaluating our DocuSign licensing approach, and we were a user-based model at the time. And and based off of our users, DocuSign was saying, hey, you need to increase the usage and the cost associated with your contract. And you came to us and said, there's actually another model that you can follow to get potentially a better fit with DocuSign, and it was more envelope-based. How many envelopes are we sending? How many envelopes are we receiving? That kind of stuff. And so once we were able to see that usage, and Okta doesn't obviously provide the envelope usage, but getting the usage metrics out of Okta and out of the associated applications has been critical for our ability to execute on additional savings that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Curtis, do you find yourself in a similar position, leveraging Okta and Zylo together to get that utilization detail? Maybe speak a little bit to that and how you're able to inform Okta with information from Zylo.
Yeah, so we do absolutely leverage Okta and Zylo together to understand how people are using it or using these tools. I think, I like to liken what we're trying to do in the SaaS management space with what I've seen spring up in more infrastructure-based shops that are leveraging AWS. So some of those bigger teams, those bigger DevOps teams will have entire AWS ops teams embedded in them that are really focused on, are we making the most efficient use of the platform and these instances and building tools along that line. And really in the SaaS management side of things, that's what we're trying to do. And I see the tools, the people who run these collaboration apps or any of these SaaS applications and the components around identity as being completely intertwined. One of the ways that we actually tie these things together is as we're doing these true ups, and a lot of our contracts are on some kind of true up model, I don't actually have a problem if someone needs a license to a piece of software. I want to provision that automatically for them. But then if they haven't used it over some period of time, I want to be able to pull it back, or at least have that conversation with them. Now, obviously, as we scale, I can't have a conversation with every single person. So I think that's where I'm really leaning on tools like Okta and Zylo and our own platform to start to engage more users at once, and to really find those pockets of people where they don't need a tool anymore, or they can give us some feedback about those tools. And so together, kind of the three really fit closely in my mind.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Curtis. Shane, to round out the conversation, do you find yourself using the Okta-Zylo combination, much like Gordon and Curtis outlined? Were you able to find any applications through Zylo that informed you how to more effectively onboard in Okta? What has that experience been between both systems?
Well, it's interesting because for me, when I started, one of the first things we implemented was Okta, and then Zylo came after, and the combination is what's important. So to me, what I've always kind of had these discussions with the Salesforces and DocuSigns of the world, that they don't provide a lot of usage information or the ability for us to see really, are people using this or not? And I think it's kind of against their own model to provide a lot of that information. I think a lot of these companies are getting better, but what Zylo did was allow me, if I put these applications behind Okta, and so people have to log in through Okta, and then that information is fed into Zylo, I can see who's using it or not. The biggest thing for me, my biggest cost as far as my business applications is Salesforce, and a lot of times, depending on where you are in your how you're using Salesforce. Like for me, this past year, I was heading into a renewal year, and so I'm needing to purchase licenses as my sales team is growing very quickly. But it's a very heavy cost. I have budgets that I'm trying to meet, et cetera. So I utilized, as Gordon mentioned, and that I utilized, are people logging in or not? I can see if they haven't logged in for 30, 60, 90 days, and we can start to, take away licenses and use them for new hires, and really try to optimize our spend that we have across some of these systems. So the power to me is the combination of Okta and Zylo. By tying them together, Okta can tell me who's logging in and when they're logging in, and when they're not logging in. And Zylo has the reporting functionality, and then also a workflow capability to actually start to automate some of that discussion around taking licenses away or et cetera.
Yeah, thanks. I think that makes a ton of sense. I'm going to shift forward a little bit, and I mentioned it at the outset here, but I'm going to walk at a very high level through the SaaS management methodology that we've recently published and gone through with a lot of our customer base and our incoming customers. But really, the very first question that we get when we implement a customer, when we come out and start working on internal initiatives with each customer is, the first question isn't how do I go save more money, or how do I understand what my users are doing and downgrade or reprovision users. It's, what is SaaS management? What am I supposed to do? What are the best in class companies out there doing? And we wanted to be able to put a framework together that outlines, from the start to the end of the process, what that SaaS management methodology is. And to take, a few seconds to walk through it, we view it in these 5 pillars, and underneath each of these pillars, there are definite aspects that we want, our customers or anybody looking at a SaaS management solution to benchmark themselves against. But it does begin with discovery. It's not just discovery one time, it's ongoing discovery. It's ensuring that you're able to understand everything that's in your environment and everything that is being deprecated or purchased in real time. Every month you're buying more applications, you're getting rid of applications. If you're high growth, your business is growing and your stack is going to continue to grow. But it needs to grow responsibly. Our CEO, Eric Christopher, always says freedom within a framework. And there's nothing more poignant for our customers than, providing some level of governance and having visibility, but also being able to allow users to do what they need. The second aspect is governance. And a lot of our customers struggle with that out of the gate. And governance around SaaS, those two things really haven't gone together historically. But for governance, we outline who needs to be involved, how you need to think about managed versus unmanaged applications across your business. And then you think about policies or formalized documents that you can roll out to your organization. Optimization is up next, and I really want to understand from you guys a little bit more about this, especially given the period of time that we're in. I think early on, a lot of companies working remote now, we've heard a lot of feedback that the bottom line is really becoming the true north for a lot of organizations, and cost containment has never been more important than it is right now. And we really don't have a customer that comes on board that isn't looking to optimize their licensing in some way. So we'll hit on that. We'll touch on planning. Gordon, you hit on it really well in your opening statements around, understanding what you have and being able to budget for it. Shane, you mentioned that as well. Budgeting, these large ticket items. How do you get out in front? SaaS is incredibly reactive. So how do we change that and shift it over to a more proactive approach? And then the last step in that process is really distribution. How do you distribute that knowledge out to your business so that they are able to understand what's available to them and make decisions internally inside their business as well? So we'll start with talking about discovery. And Shane, I'll start with you this time. Discovery for Zylo customers tends to be that icebreaker moment. A lot of our customers, as Gordon mentioned, they think they've got 150 applications, and by the time we run through our discovery process, they're finding that they have 300, 400, 500 applications across their business. Tell me, where were you in the discovery phase, coming in early to Pluralsight, building out your organization? What kind of discovery, what kind of visibility did you have into that? And what has just discovery, just visibility into all of your applications given you at Pluralsight?
Yeah, I think when I started, we didn't have much visibility other than we knew, just talking to people. There was no systems maps to show what are all the systems that we have. I always call it like my central system is going to be Salesforce with all of its ornamental systems hanging off of that tree. And we didn't even know what all those were. And so we were doing kind of word of mouth. Okay, let's meet with the sales operations team and tell us, what are you guys using? And that was a good start. But when we got Xylo in, then we were able to see. And to your point, now the first report was really shocking. And you're like, I think our number was over 400 when you first see it. Now, some of those things, I think we'll talk later about managed versus unmanaged. And there's a lot of things that are being expensed that, are classified as SaaS that it's good to know about, but we also don't necessarily care so much about them. But I think finance does, because some of those things we don't want to be expensing anymore, et cetera. But Zylo just allowed us to see everything. Like I said, some things we didn't want to see, but we ended up seeing everything. And it allows us we have to have that first kind of starting point so that we can then start to move down the path as you mentioned. We're in discovery mode. Where are we at today? And then how do we start to govern all these systems? We had to choose a lot of the biggest systems, look at redundancies and say, why are we, within the sales world, why are we using different tools to reach out to our customers? Why one team likes this flavor of tool, this other team likes this other flavor of tool. And as we look at trying to get data in the right spot so that we can do some analytics on that, as we try to do all that, these multiple tools become a problem. So I think, if I'm remembering what the question was, it's really around that discovery. And it's the first, it's so important. You have to start there. And Zylo kind of gave Pluralsight that start to say, here's what we have. So then we can move to the next step.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll jump around here with a few questions and direct them to specific panel members. But Curtis, I'll ask you a similar question around discovery. How did SLAC stay on top of the applications across their environment prior to Zylo? And what are you able to do now that you know your full inventory and you're confident in knowing what applications are in use within your organization?
So that's a trick question, right, Cory? we didn't stay on top of it at all. Yeah, we didn't stay on top of it at all. We had a theory. This was right when I was joining, that we had probably about 200 applications in use. It turned out we had over 400. And some of those, to talk to the second question a little bit, some of those were handling critical data, right? So the fact that they weren't behind SSO, that they weren't being paid on invoice, they could be shut down if someone's credit card went away. I mean, it was a bad spot to be in. We had about 4 applications behind Okta when I joined. Now we have a couple hundred, and we've whittled down the list of what we consider a managed application, and I know we'll talk in more detail about that later, down to just over 250. So it really became the mechanism for us to get the visibility we need to make some really critical decisions for the company. And not that we aren't okay with people expensing little pieces of software, experimenting with things, but really when it comes down to it, we need to look at which of these applications are handling critical data, especially customer data of any kind, and how can we get our arms around that and make sure that we have the right mechanisms in place to keep those things stable and secure. In terms of like where we're at now, I am interested in what's coming into the environment, and it's probably trickling in about 5 new tools a month, but the number's holding pretty steady. So I think, people are trying things out. We're seeing those expenses. If something really starts to take off, then we know, hey, this is something we should probably look at and make a decision if we should centrally manage it or figure out how to budget or try to shut it down if we think the capabilities are available in a managed tool already.
Yeah, that's great. Gordon, I'd love to get your input on the other side of discovery, which is, monitoring brand new applications that are coming into your environment. I think that's a critical piece of discovery because you can understand what you've got once, but if you don't stay on top of your SaaS stack, it's turning over year, and it's a brand new stack when you look at it each year. So how do you think about monitoring, and then how do you onboard apps at Instructure today once you're able to see them come into your environment, and then how do you offboard them?
Yeah, so I think from an onboarding perspective, when we first were introduced to Zylo and we started seeing all the new applications, we would just have a weekly process where we would monitor what's coming in, who's purchasing it, what's the business reason, how do we, do we need to manage it, or do we leave it unmanaged? And that was kind of our approach at first. I think over time, and I think this leads into kind of the governance side of things, what it's done is, and I was thinking about this from your opening statement, all parts of the business have access to purchase SaaS, whether that's on the credit card, whether that's from their own budgets. And when you think about software or capital spend, historically, that was a very rigorous process. You had to go through layers of approvals in order to get those things procured. You no longer need that. And so what we've done to some extent is we've pulled that process into onboarding all new applications. Now, we have a threshold, obviously, if it's less than $10,000, even less than $50,000. It's not something that we put as much rigor or constraint on the business around, whereas if it's more than $50,000 or over $100,000, then we have a lot more rigor and constraint around that. And so the Zylo application, it opened up our eyes into what we have. And then it pointed out our deficiency in our process. And because people were asking the question, why do we have so many applications? And it's because there's a lack of governance over that process. And so we pulled that process in to help onboard new applications. And when it comes to offboarding, that process is pretty simple. We don't have a lot of governance around it in terms of checking the boxes. It's much more of a budgeting process than anything else. We've turned to a zero-based budgeting approach, especially in this year where we're going through a lot of organizational changes and going from being a public company to being a private company. And so the zero-based budgeting approach really helps us. And I think that that's a good approach from an annual perspective, is just to justify your application stack across the business on a regular basis.
Yeah, thank you for that. I want to hit on governance now. We recently did a poll with our customers and asked of these themes. Where do you see your biggest need? Where are the biggest challenges? Where can you take the biggest step forward? And I was actually surprised that governance and optimization were tied as the 2 themes that are the most important to our customers. And I was surprised about governance because SaaS is a bit counter to governance. Product-led growth products, the advent of shadow IT and the personalization of software that fits your need. When we first started Zylo 4 years ago, my hypothesis was that we'd be in a lot of companies where there was a rejection of policy and process. But what we've really found out is governance is as important as ever, but it just needs to be rolled out and thought through in a progressive way. So I'd love to start with you on this, Curtis. Let us know what is your company's kind of overall stance on software purchasing, and what kind of policies do you have surrounding that today at SLAC?
Yeah, that's a good one. I have to say, like, allowing kind of the proliferation of software and SaaS is sort of how Slack became such a popular tool. So we definitely have a different stance than I may have had in a past role or past company. Really because of the nature of our business and the platform that we provide, we're a very experimental group. There's always something new being tried. There's always a new integration that needs. So really our process for onboarding or purchasing software has to reflect that. Like we can't afford to slow down the business. And so really we're keying off of a couple things. We want to make sure that things stay secure, as I've mentioned before. And so really we have a pretty robust security policy that's defined by our risk and compliance team. And we provide that through Slack as a checklist of, hey, here are the 10 things, the 10 questions that we're going to need for you and the vendor to answer before we're going to let you bring this on board. And we have some fundamental guidelines around that as well. Things like it has to be secured with SSO. If it's handling certain tiers of data, then there's access restrictions, that kind of thing. So that's one component. The next component is really around privacy and how our data is being treated. And again, that fluctuates depending on what is that data that's actually being stored in the SaaS provider. And then the last one is really just the question of, is there budget and is this the right thing to do? And in a lot of cases, there's not even budget needed, or it's pretty minimal. And so it's really about enabling tech leaders from across the business, not necessarily in IT, to sign off and say, you know what, for customer experience, they can't use this project management tool. They're going to go out and try Notion. So IT, can you help them put this behind Okta and make sure that the bill gets paid, but we'll fund it? And so really this kind of format, and really this is all done through a Slack channel for us. It just allows that kind of innovation to not get bogged down in a lot of bureaucracy or, well, we already have these 4 project management tools. It's more of a putting the trust on the risk and compliance team, the privacy team, and individual tech leaders across, or business leaders across our environment, to make that decision in that moment. I think there's a plus and a minus to that. The plus is we remain super flexible. The minus is if things start to grow in a way that's going to impact our budget negatively or is going to be a risk for the business, then we have hard conversations to have down the road. But so far, that's not been an issue. Usually we're able to bring that to a head and say, hey, look, your team's already using Asana, Trello, Smartsheet, and Jira. Do you really need this 5th tool? And most people are pretty reasonable once you put it in that way to them.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what we've heard across most of our customers. Probably Gordon and Shane would share the same sort of approach to software, is that people need to be purchasing software, using software to move them forward. And IT isn't there as a gatekeeper, more of an enabler. And this brings us to that concept of managed versus unmanaged software. And this is one that our customers have told us is critically important to them. And you guys are all 3 pure play IT professionals. We get different responses from software asset management teams, from finance teams, procurement teams, security teams. But how do you define managed and unmanaged software inside your business? and how much managed software do you want to own versus allowing the business to own it externally? So Shane, I think we'll start with you on this one. How do you view managed and unmanaged software today inside Pluralsight?
Well, it goes back to a little bit of what Curtis talked about. Like when we're reviewing some SaaS applications, what data is going to be stored in that? If there's some data that's important to the business, and we also have our legal team that chimes in on privacy and things like that, if it has that kind of data or there's information there, then we definitely want to manage it from the IT perspective. There's also things that we want to consider, like licensing. And it's an interesting concept as we've gone along, like managed versus unmanaged. There are times when a team says, hey, we can manage this. We will manage the users. We'll manage the administration of all that kind of stuff. But then when it comes down to it, if that SaaS application starts to grow, then it becomes too much work for them. They're like, we don't want to do this. We want to hand this off to the service desk. And so those are things that we look at all the time. I think mainly it comes down to how integrated is it into our main systems. If it's integrated into my systems, my applications, which a lot of times to me, if it creates value, it needs to have that integration, then it needs to be managed. But the unmanaged are the ones where, I say they still have to come through what we call our SaaS Optimization Council, but they will come through and say, hey, I want this application that sits on my desktop. It's really for something collaboration or something across my team. Those would go into the bucket of unmanaged because there's no data out there that we consider valuable to the company, and we don't really need to manage the numbers of licenses and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's great. Curtis, I'm going to pick on you again on this one because your perspective here is always one that I chat about. How do you manage and unmanaged applications at SLAC, and what is your goal? How many applications do you want IT owning internally versus allowing the business to manage independently?
Yeah, so that comes to a couple different pieces for us. I mean, as you know, we're very centralized. So all of the business or line of business apps, the core applications, a lot of the tools that you think about across the business are managed within IT. And I think, there's a couple layers of management there for us. The basic layer of management would be, we're going to help you secure it behind SSO. We may go the extra mile of helping with user controls, if there's some SCIM or JIT available. But, if it's just an app for a single department or team, then we're also likely to lean on them to self-manage to some extent. So this really, that model of having it central really makes it simple for people because we have a hand in it. Then and that's really from the ground up, right? As people buy more applications, it proliferates certain things, I keep picking on PM management software. I really don't have anything against them, but as those tools come about, they start to proliferate, more and more people use them. If they cross departments, then we start to think about, okay, is this something that we should be managing as an IT team? And then from the top down, I really think about it as, what are these core categories and what are the core systems in each one? So they're pretty clear in some areas. In collaboration, for us, it's Slack and G Suite, and Zoom sort of forms our core. On the sales side, that's really Salesforce and Troops. But that doesn't mean there isn't a universe of applications that are tied into those. And so I still consider a lot of those managed, but the degree to which we're going to manage and support them sort of goes down the further you get away from that core.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to illustrate that internally at Slack, and it's always been interesting how your team approaches management across the business. I think that's a great transition, Gordon. I'm looking at you talking optimization. I love that Curtis brought up the product or program and project management applications. We have a customer, not you, of course. We have a customer today with 45 different project management solutions. They're an enterprise customer. But that's one of the first places they started with to drive optimization. But Gordon, I'd love your perspective on this. You've shared this in the past. What do you view as your role in driving savings and optimization across your business? And what are the possibilities once you understand what you've got and how you're using it to be able to execute bottom line hard cost savings using data-driven solutions like Zylo?
Yeah, I think my primary role in terms of how I look at this is I view it as an educator. I view my role as educating the business of the application stack that's involved in driving their business and the cost associated with driving that stack, and letting them understand the impact of that budget and how we can leverage that budget in other areas if we're smarter about those savings that we can get from it. So, on a regular basis, and we don't have a real, cadence, like it's not monthly, it's not quarterly, but it is fairly regular, where we meet with the business, we look at their application stack, we say, this is the cost that, we're seeing associated with your stack. Here's the budget associated with the stack. Sometimes there's a delta and we have to manage that delta. And then we bring in usage when it's applicable. Sometimes, we don't have all of our applications behind Okta, so that we don't always have a relevant usage discussion point around applications. But when it's not behind Okta, the discussion is at what point in time can we get it behind Okta so that we can have better usage metrics behind it and evaluate whether we need to reclaim some of those unused licenses or not. So again, I think my role is primarily an educator. And, I hate to be the gatekeeper that says, no, you can't do this, or yes, you can do this. But largely when you're an educator, people come to the natural conclusion of, especially when you're in a cost savings world, especially now, people are going to naturally see, oh, I'm spending way too much on the 45 project management tools. Luckily ours is only 4, but people will naturally come to a conclusion that they can, chip in and be part of the solution.
Yeah, I'm glad you articulated it that way. And I said it at the outset of the conversation. Every one of our customers is looking to drive optimization, but they do it in different ways. And the role that IT typically plays is to inform the business, to educate them, to then work on planning and budgeting to really right-size that. So Shane, you had mentioned this, so I'd love to get your perspective on the planning part of software. And when we talk planning, we certainly talk about how are you budgeting for software, but it's also planning for renewals, potentially chargebacks in your organization. I'm not sure if you do much of that internally today, but how does visibility into your spend and your utilization play into that budgeting process for you at Pluralsight? And how do you manage those renewals? Probably more often as a cross-functional team rather than just IT managing those internally today.
Yeah, Zylo's key for our renewals now. I think so. SaaS renewals they're a lot of fun, right? They're happening at various times in the year, and we are using Zylo now, and it actually was interesting in the beginning. Procurement didn't want to use it as the central place to see where these things are happening, but now procurement is partnering with us. I probably get, just to tout SLAC, I get a SLAC message probably once or twice a week about, hey Shane, this renewal's coming. It's coming in this time frame. Do you know what we're doing with this and that? I had one today talking about some, especially as we've all gone to work from home, it's some software that helps engineers pair program together. And we're coming up on a renewal and we're looking at that. We probably want to get a lot more licenses since people are not in offices and they want to use that. So that's an example of, we use Zylo to inform us, and it's all in Zylo to let us know, here's the renewal date. And like this software we're looking at today is renewing, I think, in May 8th. So we're a couple of months, we're a little bit out, but at least we know that. I think before Zylo, there were times when we didn't know till something had auto renewed or something like that. And now we have a pretty good control on that. And lots of things go into renewals and the budgeting and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to renewal, just as we mentioned, like PM software, there's a lot of things. Like I know last year when we were renewing one of them, I think it was Asana, we were able to go and start looking at usage and reduce our licenses greatly for renewal. And Zylo acted as that kind of informative reporting tool that let us go see that. Then we could reach out to users, and they would say, "Oh yeah, I'm not really using that much anymore," and we reduced our number of licenses there. And then over time, it's also helping us to say, okay, is Asana one of those PM tools? As Gordon mentioned, he has 4. We're on that journey to get to that low of a number. But I think PM tools is kind of like this. It's your favorite flavor of ice cream. That's the way I look at it. Everybody has their choices, and even as Curtis mentioned, you're trying to not be that gatekeeper, but you want to be informative to say, okay, if we can get everybody in certain tools, it's not. I always try to educate. It's not just cost savings. There's a lot of collaboration that can be more beneficial if they're all in one system, et cetera. But that's how we utilize Zylo a lot when we're looking at budgeting and when we're looking at renewals. It's actually a key piece of both of those things these days.
Yeah, thanks for that. I knew that was kind of at the core of what you guys use for Zylo. You know, when we built the company, we really built it around renewals as our first use case, that we wanted companies to never miss a renewal again. So it's great to hear that core piece of functionality is still so valuable with our customers. One of the last questions I've got before we wrap up, I know we're just running over time, is the distribution of visibility. Once you understand what you've got in your business, the ability to create views and to have a central system of record that guides your new software purchasing process. Curtis, I'll ask you this last question. You know, now that you've got visibility into everything across your business, how do you push that visibility out to the right stakeholders in your company? And I'll couch that with, you know, the early group of people that care about software is finance and IT and security and software asset management and those organizations. But then beyond that, how are you using the visibility in Zylo to distribute that knowledge out to the business so your end users can proactively manage software kind of in the way that they bought it, which was without IT's involvement likely in the first place?
Yeah, so that's a great one. And I would say that it's still something that we're working and trying to get more mature at, right? So this really happens in 3 levels for us. And I think of it kind of at the exec tier, having these portfolio reviews with, say, the head of sales or the head of, we're really able to say, hey, here are the systems that we're providing you with, already. Here's the things that we're implementing for you, backed by data from Zylo. Here's what that's costing the business to run, right? And so that's an exec level conversation that they're in their department or their BU. The next tier down is really around people who are actually making some of the decisions day to day. So a lot of times, I mentioned the way that we do software onboarding or software purchasing. People come into channel, they're using a workflow to start to go through the bin and say, hey, look, just looking at some data in Zylo, we actually know that half of your team is using, there seems to be a lot of overlap. Can we actually pause this for a second and have a conversation about the different cases and where we should be putting our dollars? And that is usually taken really well. I have to admit, some people don't like it and think that it's a little bit creepy, but that having that conversation with the people who don't have the exec level visibility but are able to write these checks has been kind of fundamental to us getting this under control over the past couple of years. And then lastly, as far as exposing software to people, so one thing that we love doing is, and this isn't a plug for another company, so I won't even say the company name, but as people come in and ask for software in channel, we actually have a chatbot that can distribute that via Okta to those users, so it can give them access to it. So let's say we make a decision to sign a long-term contract with a company, it's another PM tool, and we say, you know what, I actually don't care who gets access to this because I know I have a mechanism for cleaning it up later, then that bot will actually just automatically provision them software. So for me, it really operates at all 3 of those layers. We need to keep the business running. We need to inform these decision makers so that they can help balance their budgets. And then we really need at the exec layer to have buy-in, especially on the big purchases.
Yeah, thanks for that, Curtis. I really appreciate the perspective, and I really appreciate the perspective from everyone on the panel today. As I mentioned, we're really defining what SaaS management is at the mid and large size enterprise, and technology organizations are the ones that really grab onto these concepts first. But what we've realized is we've reached the tipping point where large organizations, maybe in retail or insurance or consumer products, those are the companies that are now reaching that tipping point where more of their infrastructure and software is SaaS over on-prem solutions that they've had in the past. So by applying a methodology around it, by ensuring that you're discovering and governing and optimizing and planning and distributing all of the software information across your business, you can put in place a very comprehensive structure around all of this. So for everybody at Zylo, I really want to take this moment to thank Gordon, Shane, and Curtis for joining us on the line today. Your expertise is inspiring. You guys have really helped us build an organization that's customer focused and will continue to grow SaaS management as a practice as well as a delivery mechanism. So thank you all for your participation today. It's been really awesome to hear from each one of you.
Thanks, Cory.
Thank you, Cory.
Thanks, Cory.
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody for joining us on the line today. Really appreciate your time. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for your time.